what's up, mortals? It's FalonEcho here with a new video for you. Welcome to Season 1, Part 8 of What If Deku Was Majin. I just wanted to greet you guys by saying sit back and relax. You're in for a treat. So we begin. Izuku and Bakugo lunged at each other, with Bakugo throwing his right hand towards Izuku's head. Izuku ducked as Bakugo used his explosions, hurting the right side of Izuku's face, while Izuku threw a punch at Bakugo's stomach. Bakugo backed away and groaned in pain, but Izuku didn't seem to be fazed by Bakugo's attack, causing Bakugo to be even more furious at Izuku. Bakugo jumped into the air and propelled himself towards Izuku. Bakugo screamed out, "I don't care if you shoot light out of your hands or stretchy like gum!" He throws a punch with his right arm while using his left to give him a boost. "You will always be Deku!" Izuku strongly stated. "Keep calling me Deku all you want, Kachan." He grabs Bakugo's arm and throws him onto the ground. Bakugo rolled onto his stomach and looked up to see Izuku in a fighting stance. "But Deku, from now on, is the name of a hero!" All Might and Vomi explained that both teams were given a roll of capture tape from the observation room. Wrap around the enemy and they are out of the game. Some of the students stated that the heroes are on limited time and have no knowledge of the weapon, with them saying that that's unfair to them. All Might said as he looked towards the students, "Of course, heroes will always have a disadvantage, but we will always push through the struggle and come out on top." The students, even Vomi, smiled and happily cheered along with All Might, saying, "Plus Ultra!" One of the students, a very sparky student, pointed out that Bakugo was about to make a move. Vomi, All Might, and the rest of the students focused back on the fight. Bakugo's fury was at his highest, causing him to use his explosion to propel himself up in the air, and prepared to fire an explosion at Izuku once more. Izuku prepared to put up his arms as Bakugo kicked Izuku in the head. Bakugo smiled after landing a hit on Izuku's head, but realized that Izuku had wrapped white tape around his leg. Izuku was remembering the different heroes' fight styles to use in capturing and thinking about Bakugo's next move from his hero journals. Izuku looked up to see Bakugo's hand coming towards him, so he let go of the tape and jumped out of the way as Bakugo destroyed part of the wall. Izuku picked himself up and stared down at Bakugo as he did the same thing to him. They stood there waiting for one of them to attack first. Izuku put up his hand as he concentrated on doing that energy ball again to push him back. "I think I could stop Kachan right here if I just..." Izuku thought to himself, but was cut off mid-sentence. Izuku's senses began to act up, sensing everything around him. Vision going blurry and voices beginning to appear around him. He looked up towards Bakugo and noticed how much energy he has as he began to drool. Bakugo noticed what was happening to Izuku and called him a weirdo. Izuku immediately ran away from Bakugo and hid in a different part of the floor as Bakugo screamed out his name. Izuku could only think about controlling his energy and hunger. Bakugo screamed out his name as he followed him, but lost him in an instant. In the observation room, the students were amazed at the fight between Izuku and Bakugo. They talked to each other about Bakugo's anger issues with himself and Izuku, and wondered why Izuku won't use those light attacks as he did before. As they kept talking, Vomi was paying close attention to Izuku's energy, while All Might watched Mina searching for Ida. Vomi kept watching Izuku running away until he went off screen and out of everyone's sight. Vomi looked at all the screens to see where Izuku is, but didn't see him anywhere. She asked All Might why some areas don't have any cameras, and All Might couldn't say much because he doesn't know why it only has a few cameras in the building. Vomi sighed at the response as she kept paying attention to Izuku's energy. Back with Izuku, he's curled up in a ball trying to focus on his growing hunger. "Getting so hungry," Izuku said as he clenched his stomach in pain. Izuku held his ear to contact either Mina or Vomi, but realized that his earpiece was destroyed by Bakugo's attack. He could feel all the powerful energy around him, and it was making him hungry. Izuku tried to keep calm and his energy normal, but it was hard to concentrate with his hunger distracting him and laughter surrounding him. With Mina, she made her way down the halls and floors of the building. She searched room after room to find either Ida or the weapon, but nothing showed up. A burst of laughter was heard from down the hall. Mina made her way to the sound. She poked her head through the doorway to see Ida talking about how the best way to win is to become the enemy, so Ida did just that. Mina sneaked her way into the room and hid behind the pillar as he began his villain dialogue. Ida laughed out loud. He turned his head towards the doorway. Whenever the heroes come here, they'll know the true embodiment of evil. Mina tried her best to hold back her laughter from Ida pretending to be a villain, but some of it got out of her, grabbing Ida's attention and calling her out. Mina got behind the pillar and faced Ida. Ashido, you thought you could sneak up on me and capture the weapon, Ida maniacally said as Mina stood there listening and thinking about ways to get past Ida. Mina placed her hand on her earpiece to contact Izuku, but nothing came back to her. She wondered if Bakugo used his explosion to separate them from discussing with each other, or if he wanted to blow up Izuku's head. Probably the last one. Before she could think any further, Ida ran at her with his arms opened ready to apprehend her. Then think again, Ida stated. I'll stop you in your tracks, hero. Mina ran towards Ida as well. Once she was halfway there, Mina did a tiny jump and used her acid to glide, shocking him as she slipped by him. Mina jokingly said, Think again, Tin Man. Ida noticed that she was close to the weapon, so he decided to use his engines to give him a boost towards her, grabbed the weapon and placed it on the other side of the room. Even if you use your acid to glide across this floor, you're still no match for my speed. I'm a victorious villain. Ida laughed out loud. Mina stood there with anger in her eyes and acid coming out of her hand. Izuku, are you there? Mina cried out his name from her headpiece again, but the only thing that came back was static. Mina cursed out as she was trying to think of another way to capture the weapon. Izuku said that I have to be careful with my acid and OFA around the bomb. But if Ida's near it, then I can't do much. Mina kept thinking and thinking, but nothing was coming to her. All she could hear is Ida's laughing maniacally at being victorious. Mina was about to go attack again, not caring about either of the objectives, till something grabbed her shoulder. Mina looked back to see the figure of Nana standing over her. Nana suggested, Separate them, then use the OFA to flick him away. Mina couldn't say anything to her, but understood what she meant, and began to execute it until the building began to shake. Back with Bakugo and Izuku, Izuku was moving slowly, frantically searching for something as his mind and vision were becoming blurry, and the laughter was right behind him. He needed to find Bakugo and end this quickly before it was too late for both sides. Izuku thought to himself, Need energy. He couldn't think straight and only focused on the energy around him. He looked and saw Mina's and Ida's energy beginning to spike. Izuku was making his way towards them. Then suddenly, new high energy appeared in front of him. Izuku looked at it and realized who it was. Bakugo called out as his gauntlets went off. There you are, Deku! Bakugo asked why Izuku wasn't using any other light attacks, but he didn't get a response out of him. Just Izuku staring at him with hunger in his eyes. Bakugo seemed to be more weird than annoyed, but shook it off as he went on to explain how these gauntlets store his sweat, and pulling this pin will have his explosions become more destructive. All Might and Vomi heard what Bakugo just said and know what he's planning to do to Izuku. Bakugo! Izuku! Stop this right now! Vomi and All Might screamed into the microphone. However, Izuku's earpiece was destroyed by Bakugo, and Bakugo responded to them with his cocky tone. He'll be just fine if he dodges, Bakugo said as he pulled the pin from his gauntlet. A giant explosion filled the hall, shook, and destroyed part of the building. The students and teachers were able to feel the explosion from the bottom floor and were surprised that Bakugo did something like that to Izuku. Vomi and All Might are worried for Izuku the most. With Mina and Ida, they felt the entire building shake and shook that those two were able to cause this much damage just from that. Bakugo, come in! What's going on down there? Ida screamed into his earpiece, asking his teammate to respond, but nothing was coming through to him. Nana pointed out that this was her attack moment, and Mina agreed. Now! Mina and Nana thought as she summoned OFA into her fingers. She used her acid to glide at Ida. Ida realized that she was trying to attack when he was distracted and goes in to attack her. Ida stated that you won't get it, but was proven wrong. Mina used her acid to propel her to the left side of Ida and aimed her hand at him. Mina cried out, Smash! Flicking her fingers as a strong gust of wind sent Ida flying back into the wall. The windows and part of the building were blown away. She was surprised that OFA could have that kind of power. Everything around them was silent until a voice was sent throughout the building. The hero team wins! All Might screamed into the microphone. Mina grabbed her hand in pain and saw that her finger was broken and purple. She laughed out that she was victorious as she fell to her knees to catch her breath. She went towards Ida to ensure he was doing okay, but stopped halfway whenever something scared her. She looked around to find where it was coming from, although nothing else was in the room besides Ida and a fake weapon. That feeling wasn't leaving her. This video is sponsored by NordVPN. Staying safe online is an ever-growing difficulty, and hackers could exploit you. NordVPN allows you to change your IP address, making you harder to track, securing your privacy. In addition to providing you with safe passage throughout the web, you can also expand the reach of your favorite streaming services. Are you tired of going through 2, 3, or even 4 streaming services to watch your favorite anime? Well, with NordVPN, you can change your country and you'll be able to binge shows like My Hero Academia, Naruto, and many others on your favorite streaming service with just the press of a button. Check out the link in the description to get 72% off when buying for 2 years at $3.29 a month. This deal is for a limited time. And thank you to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. Bakugo, Mina, Ida, and Vomi, and everyone else felt the incarnation of evil around them as the smoke was beginning to clear up. Vomi and All Might immediately run towards the door and made their way up to the boys. Everyone else just looked at the static screen to where Bakugo and that feeling were. With Bakugo, he was frozen in place. He was feeling something that he wished he didn't feel. Fear. The smoke finally cleared up and Izuku looked down at the ground. Bakugo called out his name and was shocked at what he saw. Izuku picked up his head. His eyes were blacked out in his red pupils with a smile reaching from ear to ear. Izuku screamed out, "Boom!" Bakugo jumped back as Izuku lunged at him with incredible speed. Bakugo placed his hand in front of him and created a smokescreen to blind Izuku and run away. The smoke, however, didn't stop him as a stretchy pink arm grabbed onto Bakugo and pulled him through the smoke to an Izuku with his antenna glowing. Bakugo was terrified at what Izuku was doing, stretching out his arms, firing light balls, and turning anything to candy. Bakugo screamed out, "What the hell are you?" Izuku's smile went away for a second but came back. Izuku pulled close to Bakugo's ear and whispered, "Me, Boo, you, candy." Izuku laughed as he pointed his antenna towards Bakugo. Bakugo kept using his explosions to break free from Izuku's grasp, but it did not affect him. Bakugo closed his eyes as he readied himself to be turned into candy again. But then Vomi came in, throwing a punch in Izuku's face. The punch pushed Izuku back as he stared down at Vomi angrily for ruining his sweets time. All Might quickly grabbed Bakugo at high speeds and placed him behind Vomi and himself. "Bakugo, get Mina and Ida out of here now!" Bakugo sat down on the ground staring at Izuku, who was chuckling at them. Vomi looked back to see if Bakugo had left, and he was still there, shaking in fear. "Now!" Vomi screamed out. Bakugo broke out of his trance, listened to Vomi's words, and made his way to the nearest staircase. As he got up and ran towards it, he looked back to see Izuku watching him with a smile. Bakugo ignored it and made his way up. Izuku looked back at Vomi, and then All Might, pointing his hand out to them. "Izuku, you need to stop this right now!" Vomi screamed out as she transformed. Izuku chuckled as he fired energy blasts rapidly at them. Vomi and All Might tried their best to dodge the blast, but couldn't evade them all, with the blast that sent them flying through the wall. Izuku laughed and taunted them for failing to hit him. However, as Izuku was mocking, a dark ball of energy was sent from the wall's rubble and hit Izuku in the face. Vomi and All Might pushed themselves out of the wreckage, only to see Izuku fazed by the blast. Izuku stared at them seriously, then charged them with full force. All Might got up and charged at him with full force as well. All Might got behind Izuku and put him in a Nelson hold. Izuku struggled to break free from All Might, but All Might ensured he wasn't going anywhere. All Might told Vomi to do it now. Vomi charged at Izuku with a piece of candy in her hand. She shoved the candy down Izuku's throat. Izuku muttered, "Boo wants control." Vomi and All Might stood there and watched Izuku fighting against the inner demon within him. After a few seconds passed, Izuku stopped moving and fell silent. Vomi and All Might slowly walked towards Izuku to see if he's still alive and noticed that it worked. Izuku's eyes returned to normal and his senses returned to him. He walked all around to see if he was out of those pink caves, and he was. Before he could say anything, Fomi hugged and screamed at Izuku for what had just happened. Fomi was glad that Izuku was back to his usual self, but angry that he didn't eat any of the special treats before class started. Then they heard something coming down the steps and saw Bakugo, Mina, and Ida. They all made their way back to the front of the building where the students were there asking multiple questions. Everyone was asking what happened and why they were feeling fear. Fomi said that Izuku's quirk was active. How within a certain radius, Izuku could give off a sense of dread that could stop anyone in their tracks. And somehow it fooled everyone except Bakugo, and Fomi knew that. So as the class continued, the usual, Izuku and Bakugo were told to stay close by to Fomi. She made sure that if Izuku was going to lose himself again, she could stop it before it happened. And with Bakugo, she had to explain everything and ensure nothing got out about them. Once the class finished, most of the students made their way back to the classroom. Mina was in the recovery girl's room fixing up her finger. Recovery girl didn't give Mina a hard time for using her quirk without damaging her body, but stated that she should learn how to control it so she doesn't have that many visits. Mina nodded as she got up and made her way back to the classroom. On her way, she saw someone lying against the wall, and as she got closer, she realized who the person was. Bakugo, Mina bluntly said. Raccoon eyes, Bakugo replied. The two stood there waiting for either of them to respond. Finally, Mina spoke up in an annoyed tone. Look, if you're here to scream at me, then I won't, Mina stated as she walked by Bakugo. Mina kept walking until Bakugo grabbed her arm. She looked at him and saw that his head was down. Bakugo asked Mina, Do you trust Deku and Fomi? She had a confused look on her face. Why did Bakugo ask this question to her? Mina answered him with confidence in her voice. Of course I do, Mina stated, pulling her arm back. I've known them since elementary. If there's something that you want to know about them, then say it. Bakugo stood there quietly, wanting to say what he just heard about Deku and Fomi, but couldn't get the words out of him. Mina watches Bakugo walk away with his head down. She could tell that Bakugo wanted to say something but was afraid to say it. Although she doesn't listen to what Bakugo says, what just happened now, it seemed that he wanted her to listen to him. So whatever he heard from Izuku and Fomi, it couldn't be anything huge, right? Bakugo returned to class as the conversation about Izuku and Fomi played back in his head. Bakugo was sitting, listening to Fomi about everything about her and Izuku. All Might was standing there as if he knew what they were too. Fomi finished speaking with a tense Bakugo. She made her way towards him as she noticed his energy was getting scared. Izuku was about to get up from his seat and stop her from doing anything to Bakugo, but All Might put out his arm in front of Izuku. If you tell anyone else about us... She grabbed Bakugo's shoulder, tightening her grip as her eyes changed. Bakugo slapped her arm off him and got up from his seat. Bakugo screamed out, I won't say a damn thing to anyone! He stomped towards the door, opened it, and slammed it shut. Izuku, Fomi, and All Might stood there in silence, hoping that Bakugo would keep his word. The rest of the days went on as usual. The students go to classes, pick who becomes their class president, and becomes friends. Izuku seems to become good friends with the boy that saved Mina, Sato. Sato told him that he loves to cook and that Izuku could one day taste his cooking because he ate tons of sweets. Izuku was delighted that someone could make him sweets to eat. Everything was going well until Aizawa said that the students would experience a rescue simulation off the UA campus. He explained that 4 teachers would be there to keep an eye on them after someone breaks in and causes chaos. The students prepared themselves and rode the bus to the USJ. On the bus ride, Izuku, Sato, and Mina talked while Bakugo watched Deku closely. One of the students pointed out that Mina has a similar quirk to All Might, but Kirishima shot that down by saying Mina hurts herself and All Might doesn't. They got to the USJ and saw 2 teachers, Fomi and 13, waiting for them. Everyone was wondering who the 4th one was. The teachers and the students made their way into the USJ and were amazed at what was on the inside. Finally, Fomi and 13 chimed in and explained what they would do. The students cheered and readied themselves, but stopped as the lights went off. Then the fountain was turned off as a small portal began to appear. Everyone was confused why there was a portal opening, and then Fomi and Izuku noticed considerable energies coming from that portal. And they were right. Villains of all kind came out of the portal and were ready to fight. Volmy, Aizawa, and 13 stood on the edge of the steps, readying themselves to protect the students. They looked around to see who the biggest threat to them was. The portal man, a child with hands on him, a giant bird man with his brain opened, and a white android with a peculiar hat. Volmy squinted her eyes at what it said and was shocked by it. The red ribbon army symbol. She stepped back and everyone noticed that she was afraid of something. Volmy muttered something that Aizawa and 13 heard. He's back. Thank you all for indulging yourself in this story with us today. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, there are a few more things that I'd like to go over before the video ends. Firstly, I'd like to thank our patrons. BD Flames, Ethan Davis, Terry Chills, Shifter Milas, Adam Zagil, Zavbeat03, Zill, and Joshua Phelps. Secondly, I'd also like to thank all of our YouTube members. Toya Costa, Rob the King, Sith Lord 906, CF2364 and Knuckles, Romeo Tempest, Angel Juarez, Donald C. Stewart, Bryant Greer, and Refik 135. Thirdly, if you're in the mood for some great storytelling, We the Celestials has you covered. Our We the Celestials, My Hero Academia, and Naruto What If channels retell the story of their namesake anime with a twist. Check it out if you're interested. Fourthly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in today's excellent content production. Their details can be found in the description below. And lastly, if you're interested in what we do here at We the Celestials, I'd like to extend an invitation to join the team. The only caveat is that we only accept members from 16 years of age or older to join our crew. You can sign up for whichever category fulfills your interest by joining the recruitment Discord, using the link in the description below. We're always looking for members to join us. Well, that's it from us for today's video, so thank you all for watching and have a great day.